I hear this incredibly often. Is veganism a disguise for an eating disorder? And this could be a super controversial topic. So I do want to give it a decent time frame to address it, to talk about it, and kind of have this discussion. First, welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie. I'm Long Island's eating disorder specialist. I post on this channel 3 times a week all about eating disorders, body image issues, and general mental health. If any of that interests you, I'd greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel by clicking the subscribe button down below. Also, I have a weekly blog. I post every Friday on it, as well as an Instagram. I will leave those links in the description below. If you're interested in checking them out, please do so. And of course, if you liked this video at the end or found it helpful, I would greatly appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up. All right. As I said, there's so much controversy surrounding veganism and a lot of questions also, like, is it a disguise for an eating disorder? Is it an eating disorder? Is it healthy? All these questions come up, and I really wanted to address it as an eating disorder therapist. First and foremost, we need to define what veganism is. I don't think it's fair to talk about any topic without having a solid definition to base it off of. So just so that I don't mess anything up, I want to read it word for word from online, the Merriam-Webster dictionary. I will leave that link in the description below directly to this definition so you can see it for yourself. But what it says is, vegan is a strict vegetarian who consumes no food, such as meat, eggs, or dairy products that come from animals. Okay. To me, the definition, at least that I see here, it is strict. It even includes that word in the definition. And strict to me, for when it comes to food in general, that means to me food rules. And if it is not medically advised, I am not for food rules at all, because food rules is a way of restriction oftentimes, but also not only that, it's usually not very healthy and functional in daily living. The idea that people have food rules, having food rules in general, is disordered, and I'm not saying that every person who is vegan is having an eating disorder. That is not by any means what I'm saying. However, I am not about food rules. So I believe that especially if you have an eating disorder, or if you're in recovery from an eating disorder, to really be wary about trying to adopt veganism, or if you have a history of eating disorders in your family, it is something to be very mindful about, because when you start to adopt food rules, it could in and of itself turn into disordered eating or an eating disorder in its entirety. Again, I'm not saying every vegan turns to an eating disorder. However, I do believe that there are people who have eating disorders that it does begin with veganism as a way to restrict their food intake. And it might be in some way, shape, or form also because of their beliefs in animal cruelty and such like that, which I will get to. However, most of it is because it's just another way to restrict, and it is more of a socially acceptable way to restrict their food intake. So that is something to be extremely mindful about. And something else that I do want to mention is that most eating disorder recovery centers, whether that's residential or intensive outpatient or a partial hospitalization program, most of them will not adhere to any client who has vegan restrictions. At the very least, they do ask that while you are in the recovery center, you lean back on those rules, because you can't, it's very difficult. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it's very difficult to recover from an eating disorder having any sort of food rules that you have to follow. So at the very least, they may suggest that they can accommodate for vegetarianism, but more often I've never heard, at least, of a recovery center who will accommodate veganism. Not only is it because of technicalities, I mean, it is very difficult for you to be able to, for them to be able to get you enough nourishment from a vegan nutrition standpoint. It might be a little bit more difficult to get everything that you need in. It's not very realistic for them to be able to accommodate that, but also, as I said before, food rules tend to be disordered, and it can absolutely, at least at the very least, perpetuate an eating disorder. With all that said, I truly want to give this a fair, your review, your thoughts, or whatever the heck you want to call it. So I have another definition here. This is specifically from the vegansociety.com, and this is a definition of veganism that they have here, and I'll read it word for word, so excuse me for looking down. Veganism is a way of living which seeks to exclude, as far as is possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose. Okay. The reason why I bring this up, and I will leave this specific link in the description, the reason why I bring this up is because I can get behind this definition a little bit more. And I feel that the reason is, well, at least for me, the reason is because it doesn't sound as strict. The key components to this is as far as possible and practicable. So it doesn't go by the strict rules as was in the Merriam-Webster definition of veganism, which I believe would be more along the lines of being, or potentially more disordered. However, I understand that if a person wants to go vegan, I would suggest that this is the definition of veganism to follow. I did a video on this about flexitarianism, which is, I guess, what I would consider more of my style of eating. I do believe, and I've struggled with this for a really long time, I don't really love the cruelty to animals or exploitation of animals that occur from eating meats. However, I do understand that at this point in my life, I am not ready to, and not really willing to be honest, give up meats entirely. So how I adopt a different type of, a mechanism in my eating is not to be restrictive in the sense of me feeling like I have to adhere to strict vegetarianism or strict veganism. What I do is I tend to usually only have meat for maybe one meal a day, or sometimes just once a week if I go out to eat or something like that. And normally my breakfast and lunches and snacks and are normally substituted with things that are alternatives to the protein that I would get from meat. I do tailor back on the amount of meat that I eat. In addition to that, what I do is I make sure that the meats that I am getting, that they are as best as possible. They have higher animal welfare ratings. So if you're not familiar with that, animal welfare ratings, it is a scale from 1 to 5, and 5 being basically that the animal had like the best life possible while the animal was alive. But each one of these ratings, basically it'll explain it to you, usually on the package or at the store that you're buying it at, what it means, free range or grass fed or anything like that, because I feel that if I can't give up meat, at least I could do, or what I can do is to try to be getting the meats that I feel that at least the animal had a good life while they were alive. And that might sound a little bit weird to some people. I think that a lot of other people would understand that because it is not something I can completely give up. So I try my best to adopt the standards that I feel are appropriate. Also kosher, if you get kosher, that means that the animal was killed. I know this is awful to talk about, but the animal was killed in at least the most humane way where they do not feel pain. I know it sounds like an oxymoron, but it is apparently possible. So the reason why I bring that up is because if you feel that you are having struggles the same way that I did about eating meat, the exploitation of animals, I would really highly suggest that you are at least flexible in whatever decision that you make. If you are struggling with an eating disorder or early on in an eating disorder recovery phase, what I would truly suggest is to not decide to go veganism. If you are afraid of, as I said, all the things that I mentioned earlier regarding animal welfare, try adopting what I had talked about with, getting better animal welfare rated products if you can. If you are living at home and, your parents make all your food, then that might be a little bit more difficult. However, you can have this conversation and try to get that to be accommodated as best as they can and as best as you can. I would really highly recommend that you do not decide that you're going to cut that out in any way, shape, or form for a while, because any sort of food rules or restrictions in eating disorder recovery, particularly early on, can be a field day and for your eating disorder to start to thrive again. So really be mindful about making that choice. And if you are far along in eating disorder recovery, and I would highly suggest talking to your eating disorder therapist about it, and you really still feel strongly about going to be either vegetarian or veganism because of animal cruelty, or you feel like it is better for your health, or whatever the reasons might be, all I ask is that you be flexible with it. You do not have to adhere strictly to food rules. And I've said this in the video about flexitarianism. I will leave that link somewhere. But Carrie Underwood, I believe it was her, who had said something that she is, and I don't remember the exact phrase, but a functional vegan or something like that. So basically, she believes in non-waste, and that if a salad comes out with eggs on it, or a salad comes out, or any type of food comes out with cheese on it on accident from a restaurant, she's going to just eat it, because it's either a matter of wasting it, or you have the cheese on that and just go with the flow. And that's really where the flexibility comes in. You could do what you feel is best for you the majority of the time, but understand that it is okay, and you do not have to be strict with anything that you do, and you don't have to be, and you shouldn't be, because it's not really helpful the majority of the time. If you are struggling with making a decision, I would really highly encourage you to be as honest with yourself as possible, really evaluating why you are trying to make that decision. Is it truly more about animal welfare that you're concerned about, or is it more of a matter of just trying to find ways that you can restrict yourself and be more acceptable while you are restricting yourself? It is very important to be honest with yourself about that. And to answer the question I had put forth earlier in the video, is veganism an eating disorder? I do not believe it is an eating disorder in and of itself. I do believe that at times it can be used to disguise an eating disorder. I do believe that it could be the beginnings of an eating disorder. However, in and of itself, I truly do believe, I truly do respect that some people truly feel that they cannot engage in eating any sort of animal products because of the animal welfare, and I respect that, and I would never tell someone not to do it. However, if it is more along the lines of restricting, then that's a different story. But I think that everyone just needs to be honest with themselves, and more importantly, or additionally, just as important, being flexible with whatever food choices that you make. If you like this video, I would really greatly appreciate a thumbs up. Leave a comment down below if you have any thoughts on this. What do you think? Do you think that veganism is an eating disorder or a disguise for an eating disorder? You could click my face over here to subscribe to my channel, and I wish you flexibility on your journey to finding your state of balance, and I will see you in my next video.